They are declaring themselves challengers to your World Championship belt.
No one can beat Megabucks.
I'll put you to sleep with my $1 million dream!
I hope you don't think I'm being forward, but let's get ourselves in some Speedos and have a big old cuddle on the cigarette-scarred sticky carpet of the local 80s arcade. Don't worry, I'm not a Molesto McSex case. I'm talking about Technos Japan's classic WWF Superstars. WWF Superstars was only the second ever WWE game released after an ambitious but barely interactive home computer title called Micro League Wrestling. WWF Superstars was developed by Technos Japan under director Yoshihisa Kishimoto, the original creator of Double Dragon and River City Ransom. Technos had experience making tag team wrestling games after they developed Tag Team Wrestling for Data East in 1983. The roster lineup and storyline seem to date the beginning of programming at around August 1988, when the WWF held the first of their annual SummerSlam pay-per-view events. The event was headlined by a tag team match between the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, versus the Megabucks, Ted DiBiase and the villainous Andre the Giant. Megabucks, the heels or bad guys, are the final bosses of the game. The game itself was released in American arcades in May 1989 and was rolled out across all territories following that date. From a personal point of view, being a Double Dragon and WWF fan, my first encounter with this in a French seaport was probably the most excited I've been as an 11-year-old, although I may have been more excited when I was asleep and I thought I'd wet myself and it was stickier than wee, and my mum looked into my very soul with a sense of palpable shame when she cleaned my sheets. Hulk Hogan, the household name hero to millions, with the hairstyle of a child predator. He taught children about wholesome American subjects like praying, taking vitamins, and later having sex with your best friend's wife, and racism. In-game, Hulk has grown a bit of hair, looking like a sunburnt Dennis Waterman dressed as a 70s Swedish porn star on a break. Randy Savage! The link is no longer missing, and it looks like he's found a nice bit of tinfoil and he's pretending to be a baked potato on a camping trip. He sort of talked like how a bear might if it had human vocal cords, only it just had a really bad, awful stroke and was just about on the road to recovery thanks to its vocal coach. Yes. In-game, Randy looks like a Bee Gee by the pool on holiday in Crete, slightly worried about his mum's hip operation that's going on at home. The Big Boss Man, a prison warder who sort of ambled in from where they're filming the 80s version of Orange is the New Black in the studio next door. The 80s version of Orange is the New Black is much the same as the current edition, only all the actresses are white, have big hair, and have regular consensual sex with Pornstache, who keeps them out of trouble because they're wayward ladies and they need a man to steer 'em good. In-game, for some reason, he looks like Paul Giamatti. I don't know why, something about his face. Those little pixels look like Paul Giamatti. I don't know, don't ask me. The Honky Tonk Man, a little tier Elvis impersonator, the sort of entertainment booked at a Pontins on the verge of bankruptcy. In-game, he looks like Jamesy from Rabsy Nesbitt. A very specific demographic will get that reference, a demographic that will only see this video by pure accident while stumbling through on YouTube looking for cooking tips or maybe softcore movie sex scenes because Dad doesn't know that YouPorn exists. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, an uncoordinated messy lummox, lolloping around with his tongue hanging out while clutching a plank. He's sort of a product of a clumsy, horrifying, lonely bestial encounter between a Labrador and a hobo. In-game, Jim Duggan's sprite looks surprisingly like a buff Matt Berry. There's another fantastic reference which most of the world won't get. The Ultimate Warrior, a meat tower of steroids, face paint, hairspray, anger and nonsense speak. He was a wee bit crazy, with a few videos and public engagements revealing opinions that would make Alex Jones on InfoWars tell him he was going a bit too far and to cool his tits. In-game, a Polaroid of your mum at Glastonbury in her youth, possibly on Mandy, decorated like a festival tree with her top off. What's incredible is looking at this roster and seeing that half of it has passed on. A scary statistic despite the game being nearly 30 years old. Some of the WWF games that came later, even by 15 to 20 years, have similar numbers of men passed on way too early, which shows the strain of nightly bouts and the abuse that they put their bodies through both in and out of the ring. R.I.P. fellas. Now, back to the trivial piffle about an old game no one cares about. The single-player or two-player co-op mode sees players select a tag team who then must battle teams made up of the other characters in a series of New York matches before facing the Megabucks in a title match. After defeating the villainous pair, an evil team of Noel Edmonds and a giant Fred West with kidney issues, you have to then do the whole thing again, but in Japan because they didn't see it, so it didn't happen or something. You win matches either by pinning one of your opponents for 3 seconds, making them give up in a submission, or by stopping them entering the ring for 20 seconds. The WWE rules are 10, but the refs count really slowly during these real matches, like they're playing hide and seek with an indecisive toddler. The 20-second rule is actually a Japanese wrestling thing, which means someone in Technos only did half their homework. Also, you can't win a belt in WWE by the champions being counted out, but when I played, this happened. I hope someone at Technos Japan had their scrotum exposed to the machinations of a hole punch for this terrible crime. Like slide that old skin in there and Kaslamo! Little sliced ham treats for gerbil sandwiches.
Be smart. Be safe. Don't try this at home.
The game came pretty soon after Technos had put out the arcade version of Double Dragon 2, and the influence of that franchise are clear. Characters are of a similar size to Double Dragon characters and feature a similar art style in terms of musculature. Strikes have a similar audible loud crunch to them, and the grapples are initiated in a similar way, albeit more frequently than Billy and Jimmy Lee and their encounters with the Black Warrior gang. Plus, Billy is in the audience, perhaps finding a bit of escapism after his girlfriend got absolutely collindered by Phil Collins with a machine gun. He seems to be completely stunned by action like people being thrown into the barrier in front of him. Remember, this is the guy who twice went on epic vigilante missions, beating over 200 people to death, including a bright green Mr. T and a clone of himself. Oh, and beating up his brother to get laid. Wait, he's on both sides of the ring. His mastery of the martial arts knows no end. The control has a surprising amount of depth to it, with a variety of moves accessed from different combinations of the kick and punch buttons, in a variety of different scenarios and situations. It's not going to be competing with the likes of the 2K WWE or the Fire Pro Wrestling games for technical wrestling, but remember, it is 30 years old. What were you doing 30 years ago? Getting confused thoughts of looking at posters of Cindy Crawford? Shooting crossbows and catapults discs at the family dog? Dribbling hot saliva into your baby mush? Swimming around some testicles? You're not the person to judge. Now, each wrestler has different moves and poses. Look at DiBiase here, backing away like a coward. That man is a putz. Big Boss Man is unique in that he can pin in 2 different ways, either by throwing the full weight of his chunky frame on them like a rapey hippo, or by awkwardly holding their breasts while making no eye contact. You know, like when you visit a prostitute and you feel a bit uncomfortable to be there and you feel sorry for everyone and that might just be me. Moving on. Hogan slaps like a pissed girl who's just discovered his boyfriend kissing that slut Charlotte who works in H&M in the smoking area outside the club. Hacksaw Jim Duggan here has the most coy kicks I've ever seen, like he's pushing away a little dog that's trying to shag your leg. Look at that. Now compare it to Honky Tonk Savage's brutal leg swings. Speaking of Randy Savage, his clothesline looks absolutely vicious. I'll give you one of those Tom Waits voices right there. Now, can we talk about Ultimate Warrior's Gorilla Press here? Not only in the game, but in real life. I mean, there's no way to do that move without getting a proper handful of someone's trouser scepter. Touching your workmate's genitals as part of your job, that's got to create some tension at lunchtime. One of my favourite moves is throwing the opponent over the top rope and then getting some serious air and splashing them on the outside. You can hit wrestlers with a table outside too, the bludgeoning instrument of choice for the discerning steroid-ridden psychopath. So we've got all these unique moves we've learned and when's best to use them, but then you get to Andre the Giant and he's like, nah, I'm too fat and you can't do them with me. I'm all jaundiced from the 6 bottles of wine I had before the match. The one grapple move you can do on Andre, apart from rebounding him off the ropes with an Irish whip, is the body slam. If you absolutely hammer punch and diagonally up in a grapple, you can recreate that famous Hogan vs Andre WrestleMania 3 moment that was never to be repeated. Only you can do it multiple times with people like Randy Savage here, or the Honky Tonk Man, or Big Boss Man, or whoever. Yeah. All in all, the game is great, but with some frustrations. Sometimes the CPU will go on a flurry of attacks that you just can't stop, particularly if you try to stop them making a tag. The game itself is better than any home WWF game of the time, and it never got a port to a home system, and still hasn't to this day. This is because the rights to the WWF home console releases were held by Acclaim, then LJN, and every game released by them was either dull, average, turgid, or simple. Even Rare couldn't make a decent WWF game despite their pedigree. Ocean released a one-on-one game for British home computer formats in 1991 called WWF WrestleMania, which seemed to use a lot of the visual assets from the Superstars game, but with slightly altered sprites to resemble different wrestlers. Warlord here looks a bit like the Hulk Hogan sprite. It was fine at the time, but it's aged badly. Much worse than WWF Superstars, which is still a pretty good play today. The game was eventually succeeded in 1991 by its sequel WrestleFest, but that's a story for another time. I hate to sound needy, but do you want me there another time? Another quick wrestle on that gruesome sweaty floor in our pants? I mean, we can leave here as friends and sort of talk to each other on Messenger occasionally, and then forget this ever happened, or... I don't know. Look, I'm up for it if you are. I'm very busy, so I won't be for a fair few weeks, but let me know in the comments. If it's a positive response because I'm pathetic and need validation, I'll do a follow-up. If it's not, I'll haunt you. I won't kill myself first, I'll just turn up in your room in a sheet and stare at you until you wake up. And then I'll step a little bit closer when you've woken up and go woo once and carry on staring until the constabulary arrives. Yeah, I will. Okay, thanks, bye!